All right, we'll begin. Since B'ezrat Hashem this coming Motzei Shabbat is Chag Shavuot, we'll do a special talk about the holiday, as we do every year. We're not going to, however, review the same points from last year. There's so much information that it's always a good idea to discuss an additional aspect of the holiday. I would venture to say that Chag Shavuot perhaps is the most important holiday of the year. And some people wonder, how could that be? You know, we have Rosh Hashanah, Yom Adin, we have Chag Pesach, everybody works so hard to prepare for it. And it's true, of course, that all the holidays are important, but there's something to Chag Shavuot that not everyone is aware of, and it has nothing to do with eating cheesecake. even though there's a custom to eat cheesecake. It has nothing to do with that. And even though it's only one day in Eretz Yisrael, it's 2 days here in Chutz La'aretz, unfortunately, it is not so popular. It is not a holiday that is very, very well understood, even though, Baruch Hashem, more and more every year people are understanding the importance and the value of staying up the first night, which is a custom brought down, mentioned in the Zohar, of how important it is to stay up the whole night, that night, during which we receive the Torah. To stay up all night to learn Torah is a very important minhag, and more people are becoming aware of that, and doing so, participating in lectures that are being offered in various communities. But why is it that this Chag is really the most important one? I would say that it's the most important one because this holiday contains the tachlit. It contains the purpose of the entire creation of man, especially the purpose for which the Jew is here in this world. Especially for the mission of the Jew. It is all contained in Chag Shavuot. And what is that mission of the Jew? Lesharet et Hashem, to serve God. So, since this holiday contains within it the ultimate goal for which we left Egypt, it is essentially a continuation of Chag Pesach. In other words, why did we come out of Egypt? Why did God redeem us out of Egypt? It was in order to give us the Torah 50 days later. So these two holidays are in a sense connected to each other. More specifically, however, the goal for the Jew in this lifetime is to acquire two crowns. In speaking about the Jew's goal, the Jew's purpose, everyone is familiar with the crown of Torah. Other people are familiar with the crown on their teeth. Yeah, we're talking about something else here. We're talking about the crown of Torah and the other crown, that is a crown of Shem Tov, of acquiring a good name. So if we were to define the purpose, we were to define a little bit more in detail the mission of the Jew in this world, it is partially to acquire these two crowns for himself. And in doing so, on his way to doing so, he obviously would be achieving what is expected of him to achieve. The observance, the fulfillment of the mitzvot. And otherwise, that is how you acquire the crown of Torah and the crown of a good name, which involves or entails observance of mitzvot ben adam lechavero, behaving oneself properly, doing the right things between man and his fellow Jew or fellow non-Jew, right? So these are the two crowns that we're speaking about, crowns that are significant in the sense that this is our mission. This is what we have to involve ourselves in. This is what we have to look out for. This is what we have to aim for. So, in celebrating Chag Shavuot, we're celebrating not only something that happened years ago. Of course, we commemorate the holiday, we commemorate what happened, but it's a celebration for us is to remember what this is for, what is expected of us. When we celebrate, we are reminding ourselves of something. It's not just fireworks, let's enjoy it. It's another occasion for a holiday. You know, the Goyim are always looking for another day to make a holiday. So they can go on a weekend, so they can go on vacation. Let's make this coming Monday a holiday. And it is a holiday, by the way, right? Memorial Day, I think. Always looking for days to rest. They commemorate, of course, they give speeches about what happened on Memorial Day, Veterans Day, and so forth. But that's not the idea behind a Jewish holiday. A Jewish holiday is to recall the past. But what does the past represent? What did happen? Why did it happen? Okay, so we received the Torah, but what for? Why was there a Ma'amad Har Sinai? Why did we stand? Why did Hashem communicate to us at that point? Openly, we heard it. What does it represent? What are we supposed to remember from it? And teach it, of course, over to our children. What exactly happens on Chag HaShavuot is the culmination of what happened in Chag HaPesach. Culmination meaning the ultimate goal. Out of Chag HaPesach we find that the goal was to be freed from slavery, from bondage. That's physical. But that's just limited. That's not the ultimate goal. You need to come out of Egypt, you need to come out of bondage, you need to be a free man in order to be able to observe the mitzvot. Throughout history, the Jew had great difficulties observing mitzvot if he was not free. This country, they say, you have freedom of religion. Baruch Hashem for that, because we are free to observe the Torah mitzvot. You can eat what you want, you can pray however you want, you can learn Torah, you can circumcise your children, you can slaughter meat according to the ritual. In Europe, they're trying to limit that too now. So Baruch Hashem, what we got from Chag HaPesach is freedom of the physical body, which will enable us to observe the mitzvot later on. But the culmination, the ultimate goal of Chag HaPesach is Chag HaShavuot, because Chag HaShavuot represents the ultimate freedom. Cherut for the neshama, not just for the physical body. Through acceptance of the Torah, we will become free. In what way will we become free? We will be free of our Yetzer Hara. We can be free of the Yetzer Hara. In other words, if we learn the Torah, if we observe the mitzvot, we can gain the proper direction, the clarity, the strength to be able to do battle with the Yetzer Hara. We can basically free ourselves from the shackles of this very challenging foe, enemy, that is always in the way, trying to give us a hard time, trying to obstruct the way to observance of Hashem. So Chag HaShavuot, in receiving the Torah, is so important because it ultimately represents what we're here for. Without the Torah, nothing has any purpose, no value. As we learned in Pirkei Avot, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד, על התורה ועל העבודה והגמילות חסדים. The world stands for this, the world was created for this. Without any one of those three, Torah, the service of Hashem in acts of kindness, nothing makes sense. There's no purpose for this world. So what do we achieve in Chag HaShavuot? What kind of a cherut? Cherut from the Yetzer Hara. Cherut mimalach hamavet, the rabbis tell us in the Midrash. Even from the angel of death. The Torah protects us. We have cherut from all derech eretz. All derech eretz is from the burden of mundane activities. As the rabbis tell us in Pirkei Avot, if one does not assume the all of Torah, then Hashem will give him the all of derech eretz, all the burden of all kinds of mundane activities, bills, issues to deal with, all kinds of problems that come up. This is called all derech eretz. But if we take upon ourselves the all Torah, so Hashem says, oh, you already have the yoke of heaven, the yoke of Torah, that's a yoke, it's a burden. Then I will remove from you the all derech eretz. I will not let you have another yoke, another burden. Otherwise we would be overwhelmed. A person cannot carry the weight of everything on his back. So Hashem gives him something. In Yiddish it's called a pekale. Pekale means a package. Everybody has his little bundle, his little package of issues, let's call them issues, difficulties, hardships in life, things that he has to deal with, all kinds of problems. And Hashem only gives us what we can handle, of course. He doesn't give us somebody else's troubles because we wouldn't be able to handle his troubles. Everyone got his customized life that he can bear with. But here is a guarantee. If we accept the all Torah, the burden of the Torah, the yoke of Torah mitzvot, which is not easy. It requires tremendous effort, investment of our time, morning, afternoon, at night, right? Mitzvot, the learning. Then Hashem says, you already have it. You already have the burden, you already have the yoke. I'm not going to give you another one. So this is called true cherut of the neshama, where the soul is free to be able to truly observe the Torah and mitzvot without being tied down by any other difficulties that exist. And there are many such difficulties. Because Chag HaShavuot represents the ultimate tachlit, the ultimate goal, the ultimate purpose for which we came out of Egypt, it is also characterized as a marriage between Am Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What is marriage? Marriage is a union of two individuals with a common goal, common purpose, right? It's not only living together, and it's not only producing children, which is by the way, and it's of course an important mitzvah, but that is not the ultimate goal of marriage. Marriage involves, according to the Torah, the union of two individuals and the formation of basar echad, one flesh, which on the Kabbalistic level, that is the way they really are. They are one soul that comes down as male and female. Usually the husband is older than the woman because he usually comes down first. But nevertheless, if they're true soulmates, they come together and they unite, and B'ezrat Hashem they succeed in staying together. A lot of people come together, they find each other, but they somehow cannot hold on to each other. But the goal is to hold on to each other. The goal is to stay with each other forever, as long as they understand why they're coming together. People don't always understand this. It is a big puzzle, really a big puzzle why so many people are getting divorced today. But when you look at the puzzle and you dissect it, you analyze the pieces, the broken pieces unfortunately, you see all kinds of problems that people have, and one of the problems that almost everyone has is not a proper understanding of what marriage is meant to be. What are we doing together? What are we committing ourselves to do together? And it has nothing to do with love. Of course, love and respect are necessary to preserve the marriage. Yeah, to preserve, yes, but that's not why you're getting married. Yeah, the union of the two souls of the two individuals has ultimately the goal of uniting, of combining the two, male and female, in such a way that each one will complement the other, right? Because each one is lacking in something. We all have our weaknesses. Each one will complement the other. It will be an ezer kenegdo. And together they will be able to tap onto their true potential. And if the two of them understand that they're there for each other and they need each other, they will be able to maximize their potential. And when an individual maximizes his potential, I envy him, because he will be able to more easily achieve his ultimate goal. In other words, fulfill his mission in this world, leave this world with a good name, with Nachat B'ezrat Hashem from his children and grandchildren. It has so many positive consequences, understanding what the ultimate purpose of marriage. If we have that clarity, it has a positive domino effect of bringing about so much change in the individual, so much strength in the connection between one and the Almighty. It just does so much. As the rabbis tell us, the kibbut av va'em, the honor of one's parents, is a vehicle to ahavat Hashem, to the love of Hashem. So Hashem has put vehicles, instruments in this world that if we use them properly, it elevates us tremendously. Kedoshim to you, through the proper application of mitzvot, you will be holy. You will be in mamlechet kohanim begoy kadosh. So much to gain from learning Torah. So much to gain from a good, healthy marriage. So much. So imagine now that we understand just a little bit of what marriage is, what it's supposed to accomplish. Chag HaShavuot is the marriage of Am Yisrael and the Torah. So you know what that means? This is it. This is the time that we connected with Hashem. This is the time that we were formed as a nation. This is the time from which, this point in time, all souls, neshamot, born to a Jewish mother, are Jewish. Because the souls, there's different souls. They travel down, they come down into this world depending on who the owner of this womb is. If it's a non-Jewish womb, right, then they will not put through this woman any longer just any soul. As of Matan Torah, everything is split. You have the Jewish nation, the non-Jewish world. Therefore, you can't mix. Short circuit. Different souls. Okay? So, the custom, one of the reasons why we eat dairy is because as of that time, we can no longer eat the same meat that we ate before, which was not necessarily slaughtered correctly. We have the mitzvot of ilchot shechita, ilchot basar b'chalav, as of that point. Right? We didn't get all the mitzvot as soon as we got out of Egypt. Little by little. The tefillin, the Shabbat, right? Pesach, and so forth. And all of a sudden we have to keep a kosher kitchen. Separate dairy from meat. The shechita has to be done properly. So there was no kelim. How are we going to eat the meat? We don't have time to make agala, nibun, to make everything kosher. Let's eat dairy. Let's have some fish or some dairy food. So that's one of the explanations given. So you understand that at this point so much is happening. But what the more important detail that is happening is the formation of a very strong bond between the Jewish nation and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where Hashem says, now I treat you as my children. And you know what that means? You are my children, therefore you will have the power that no one else has to change the mazal. This is not something that is clearly written in any book. In other words, we know that Chag HaShavuot represents Herut, freedom. And the commentators explain what the Midrash says, that freedom is from the Yetzirah, Melach HaMavet, what we just said. But here's an additional element of freedom that many are not aware of. That is a very, very important type of freedom. Freedom of one's mazal, which is very constraining and limiting. You can't just do whatever you want. You are limited by certain constraints of the mazal. You would like to earn $150,000. So what do? You go and get your PhD. That won't guarantee you a job. Forget about the $150,000. It won't even guarantee you a job if the mazal is no good. People don't understand how mazal works. If a person has good mazal, even if he doesn't know a word of English, he can become not $150,000, $1 million overnight. Right? Very easy. So here comes along Hashem and says, I'm giving you the Torah. You'll be able to elevate yourself. You'll be able to free yourself of all kinds of shackles, and especially something that you may not be aware of. Avraham Avinu didn't even know this. Avraham Avinu comes to me, Hashem says in the Midrash, Hashem, you promised I will have children. I just read my astrological chart. He was a big astrologer. I don't see any children in my mazal. Says Avraham Avinu, I know you discovered that I exist. I know you discovered that I run the show, that I'm the boss. Baruch Hashem, you've discovered a lot of things about me, but there's one thing you don't know yet about me. You know that mazal that you learned, that you know so much about? I can change that too. What's the big deal? I just add a letter to your name. I changed your wife's name. So Abraham doesn't have children. Abraham does. Sarai does not have. Sarah does. Big deal. Changing names, adding a name, change mazal. Am Yisrael can do that. So that freedom that we have, that we received on Chag HaShavuot in accepting the Torah, is a very powerful kind of freedom. It's not just freedom of the body, which we had Pesach. It's a freedom of the soul. In other words, freedom to be able to observe Torah mitzvot, the freedom to be able to do battle with our Yetzirah through the learning of the Torah, but it also allows us a very powerful tool to free ourselves from the limitations or constraints of the mazal. So Am Yisrael has mazal, like everybody else does. But Rashi says, what does it mean that they don't have? What they don't have is not that they don't have it at all, that they can change it through teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah. Through repentance, prayer, and charity. These are vehicles through which we can change it if Hashem agrees. Of course, Hashem has to agree that the changing of the mazal is to our benefit. Sometimes Hashem says, you know what, you're better off with this mazal. Don't beg too much because it needs to stay this way for reasons that only Hashem knows. But we need to try. Pray. We need to try. So that's the power that we were given on Chag HaShavuot. So getting back to what we were saying, so marriage is a powerful union. So much can be gained. And Hashem says, this day is a marriage between me and you. Do you know what a marriage means? A marriage means commitment. And a commitment means on a daily basis. Could you imagine a husband telling his wife, I'm only your husband once a week? I don't think most women would agree to that. Once a week? What is this? Right? Once a week. You're a man and you're a woman, right? Hopefully, B'ezrat Hashem, you respect each other, you love each other, you live together every day, as much as possible. Of course, there are times we both need to go on a trip. One may not have the other, but you still keep in touch, you still remember them, you still respect them, you still do for them, no matter where you are. But it's not a commitment of once in a while, it's a commitment on a daily basis, which is what the meaning of the words V'agita bo yomam v'layla means. When Hashem wants us to learn His Torah, it's not just a once in a while thing. Yomam v'layla, day and night. Torah is very different than all other bodies of knowledge. All bodies of knowledge, including medicine, you went to school, you accumulated a lot of knowledge, you graduated, and that's it. You don't really have to learn anymore. The reason why they make you learn in the various, I guess, countries where they issue licenses is because they want you to refresh your learning, plus they want you to pick up on new things that have come up. A doctor has to be aware, any profession has to be aware of new technologies, new discoveries, additional information that may have come up after he graduated. But other than that, other than having to supplement your knowledge with once a year conferences or seminars, as they're called, once you got your degree, you're done with it. You've learned it. Torah is not like that. The Torah is not, I learned it, and that's it. Once in a while I'll review so I do not forget. The Torah needs to be learned on a regular basis. Why? Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yamenu. Our life depends on that. Our life depends on that, and without it, Chas v'shalom, one risks severing himself completely from the Jewish people. Ad kedei kach. And in order to understand how this happens, that one Chazan can risk severing himself from the Jewish people if he stops learning, we need to understand the sad phenomena that occurs of why the youth, many youth, who grew up in Orthodox homes, all of a sudden abandon their Jewish tradition and yordim mi'aderech, as we say in Hebrew. They leave the ways of Torah. This happens, of course, gradually. It doesn't happen just like that. How could this happen? How does it happen? They had hopefully a good education. They went to Jewish schools. So there's no problem with public schools here. They had Jewish friends. The home was not only Jewish, it was Orthodox. The father could be even was a rabbi. You think this doesn't happen? It has happened throughout history, to the best of families. So we have to understand why how does this happen? In the past, we have spoken about various factors that contribute or that influence individuals. One's mazal, of course, one's education. But Kabbalistically, there is one factor that many are unaware of, and it's a very significant factor, and that is the influence of the father and mother during the time that they were together. During the time of conception, in other words, in preparation for conception. Conception is a very critical moment, because that is the time that it is determined which neshama comes down into this physical body that is being formed. And the parents could be good people, good husband, good man, good woman, but that neshama that's coming into that child may not necessarily be of the best quality neshama. And of course, there is additional details in what can happen during the pregnancy and so forth. We don't have the time to get into that. But this is a very important and critical time when a husband and wife are together, or right before they are together, their thoughts, their conduct, and so forth. This can make a big difference as to which neshama will enter. And of course, the better the neshama, the better its chances of success. The neshama that is not as of the highest grade or quality, let's say, will have more challenges. It could still be a great tzaddik, but it will have more of a yetzer hara perhaps. It will have more difficulties. I'll give you an example. The rabbis tell us how during that time that a man and woman are together, if a man forces the woman or is disrespectful of her, or if the two of them are not really behaving themselves right, using foul language and yelling, things like of that nature, the child could be a big bal chutzpah, a tremendous chutzpah, tremendous. Even though they're both very, very religious and everything else is okay, but because of their temperament and because of their conduct, it could lead that child to have that quality. Just for not doing things right during the time that they were together. So there's no doubt that there's a great deal of influence during that time that the husband and wife were together. But that is another subject. Let's assume that everything is okay. They didn't do anything wrong. And still, the child goes off to dinner. What could be another reason? What happens many times is that a child has everything he ever needed. Baruch Hashem, his parents can afford it, so the physical body is satisfied. It eats, it drinks, it is able to enjoy itself, it is able to go on vacation, it is able to buy the latest, what is it called, iPhone, iPad? I don't know the differences between the things. You know, the ones that cost $400, the ones that people stand in line for 3 days and sleep on the street, whatever it is called. Yeah, those things I'm talking about. So he has all of those things that his heart desires. What is that?
Gadgets.
Gadgets, yeah. Now what? What else could you give him? All of a sudden, this good neshama, it's a good neshama, feels hungry. The neshama, not the body. The physical body has everything. All of a sudden, the neshama awakens in it. It awakens. Sometimes the neshama is awake. Unfortunately, not too often by many people. The neshama is asleep. If the neshama would be awake, life would be different. The world would look different. But people's physical body is awake. And unfortunately, the neshama is dormant. But all of a sudden, there are times the neshama is edgy, is hungry. The neshama wants something. And all of a sudden, this person who thought he was happy and thought he had all this money, he has the best cars, not lacking, all of a sudden he feels an emptiness. And this is a symptom that many people have in Israel, in Chutz La'aretz here. This is what brings them back. Many of them come back b'tshuva as a result of this. In other words, this emptiness has a positive, and we will see now the negative. The positive is another lecture. In other words, how people have come back b'tshuva. People have come back b'tshuva because of this emptiness, as well as other reasons. But here is a dangerous form of emptiness, where they see, I'm not happy. What do you mean you're not happy? Your wife, kids, or if he's not married, you have a job, you're making a good salary, you have a good car. Why shouldn't you be happy? What's missing? The soul, the neshama, feels an emptiness over here. And it's looking, and it's looking, and it's looking, and it can't make itself happy. So it experiments with drugs, and with alcohol, and with all kinds of things that it thinks, he or she thinks, that will satisfy him, will make him happy. He's depressed. Why should he be depressed? The doctor says you need Prozac. That's not going to cure the problem. Just temporarily calm him down. What is his problem? He has everything. What could be wrong? Why is he leaving such a precious tradition of thousands of years that his great-grandparents were willing to give their life for? They died for this. All of a sudden he thinks it's not true? No, not necessarily. You have people who, of course, claim that they have questions on this, but that's an excuse, that's a front. Deeper down there is a problem. He has a problem with himself, but he puts up a front. I don't think this is true. I think the rabbis made it up. That's a front. Usually it's a front. It's not a logical argument. You can tell by a person's attitude and how he presents a question whether he really means it, he really wants to know the truth, it's just an excuse. You know, like the people who believe in evolution, you think they really believe in evolution? It's only an excuse not to believe in God. Because to believe in God means you can't do whatever you want, and they would love to do what they want. That's the common denominator of atheists. They don't want to believe in God, so they need a replacement. It's called atheism. You do have a few that are called agnostics. I haven't made up my mind yet. Okay, how long do you need? Come here, I'll teach you, right? Oh, no, next week. You see, they're afraid, they hesitate. They don't want to know because it will obligate them. So people put up a front. What's wrong? No, this is not for me. This is a ghetto. You know, you have all kinds of reactions of kids and even some adults who become upset with the system, in quotes, the system, the religious system. Coercion, they say. Those guys are coercing. They live in a ghetto, those black hats. They believe in segregating men from women in the buses. You'll hear all kinds of people's reactions. These are Orthodox kids and adults who grew up with this. What do you mean segregation? Come on, don't you understand the beauty of it, the need for it? Why the halacha was formulated as such? Come on. It's a front. All these excuses are a front. So what's going on in his head? Nothing. It's in his neshama that's going on. The neshama is hungry. And it's looking for ways to divert attention or focus from the real problems, trying to satisfy itself, trying to make itself happy. And forget drugs. Let me get out of this and begin to enjoy life and do whatever I want. You can enjoy life and be an observant Jew. There's almost anything you want in the world. There's even kosher cruises. You know, you can have all the good foods, go on a big boat. There's almost today, you can do almost anything you want and still be a kosher observant Jew. So what is it? So they want to feel liberated. They don't understand that true liberation comes from Torah. But here they're attempting to liberate themselves from the constraints of what they think are constraints of the Torah, to find happiness. And they don't seem to find it. So that is why what happens in the end is they get into trouble, and they don't even know themselves how it happened. They just get into trouble. Worse and worse and worse and worse. The Yerushalmi says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu expressed once, Halevai oti azvu betorati shamor. I wouldn't have minded, God says, if they left me. They left me. They left to observe the mitzvot, but they kept the Torah, the learning of Torah. Why? Because if a person does not observe the mitzvot in its entirety, but it learns Torah, ha'or sheba Torah tarzirem lemutav. The light of the Torah will bring them back to the right path. So Hashem says, this is why I want you to learn Torah. It's not just an academic exercise. It's not just to be scholarly, to be knowledgeable. It's not like any other profession. Your life depends on this. This will give you life. This will stimulate you. This will encourage you. This will give you strength. This will give you direction. This is your GPS. This is your life. Don't take it lightly. A Jew cannot be without Torah. And you know, you can test it yourself. I mean, God forbid a person does not have one day Torah, he feels it. I mean, he may not be so aware of it one day, but it makes a difference. It has a cumulative effect. We're missing something without it. You know, you read a story, a beautiful story about a tzaddik. Just a story. You didn't even learn a whole chapter in the Chumash or Gemara. Just a story of a tzaddik. It already gives you stimulation. It already is uplifting. It motivates you. Wow. I wish I could do that. I wish I could be like that. Yeah, it should. It should motivate anybody who has a sensitive neshama and his origin is Jewish. It will stimulate him. If it does not, maybe there's somebody non-Jewish in the family. The rabbis tell us that sometimes you can detect that an individual lacks purity in his lineage by the way he talks, he conducts himself, by what he values or he does not value. You can detect it. The rabbis were able to detect if a Jew all of a sudden takes off his kippah where he shouldn't. Like the rabbis the Gemara saw two kids walking in the street. One of them was without a kippah, a head covering. Do you know what it means to walk without a head covering during the days of the Tanaim? It was almost unheard of. It was the biggest chutzpah. It was audacious. So the rabbi saw this. Two kids, one with a kippah, the other one without a kippah. One rabbi says, there were three rabbis. One rabbi says, this guy must be a mamzer. A bastard. Only somebody like that is so unclean that he can just take off his kippah. The other rabbi says, no, that's a little bit too strict. It's also possible that he's ben hanidah, that his mother didn't go to the mikveh. That's enough for him to act like that. Comes along Rabbi Akiva, you both are wrong. He's a mamzer and a ben hanidah. Both! Oh no. Hey, you think he just guessed? He actually wanted to make sure he was right. He went over to the mother. Come on, tell me the story. How was this child, how did he come to the world? And she said basically that what happened was that during her chuppah, all of a sudden, she saw blood. And as a result of that, she couldn't be that night with her husband to fulfill the mitzvah. Right? It could happen. It's called chupat nidah. So since she was separated from her husband, the husband's best man spent that night with the wife, with that woman. And this child was born as a result of that illegitimate union between the other man and this woman. So I always like to ask this challenging question. How could a woman give birth, or how could she become pregnant if she's a nidah? That she's a mamzer, that the child is a mamzer, we understand, because she's married, right? But a woman cannot become pregnant. She cannot become pregnant when she has her nidah. So here, she was a nidah, and she became pregnant. So the child, of course, was a ben hanidah, and I was saying, but how could she have become pregnant if she was a nidah? Everybody got the question?
Yeah.
Let's hear an answer. For that, you have to know hilchot nidah. A woman does not only become a nidah during her cycle once a month. It can happen as a result of fear and excitement, etc. That all of a sudden there's bleeding, there's stains. That's what a stain, all kinds of things. She went on a roller coaster in Disneyland. Magic Mountain actually is worse, no? One of them, right? Or she was on a plane, 35,000. Yeah, these things happen, and they produce sometimes situations which renders her a nidah. So even though she's not a real nidah, she is a nidah as far as tum'ah is concerned. And guess what? She can become pregnant. So possibly that's how it happened. In any event, you see from this how the rabbis will be able to detect something was wrong with that child. There's another story, since we're already talking about, there's another story of several kids, Kohanim, that were talking excitedly. What do kids talk about Kohanim? The Kohanim used to eat a lot. They used to eat from the various sacrifices. They used to eat from the lechem hapanim, the 12 breads. After the week, it was given to everyone to share. But you don't have that much bread, and you have a lot of Kohanim. So the kids had a discussion. How much did you get? How big was your piece? So each one said something else. Mine was as big as an olive, as big as a date. One of the Kohanim, the little kid, said, mine was as big as the tail of a lizard. So the rabbis overheard that. How does a Kohen, God forbid, describe the lechem hapanim using terms of tum'ah? The tail of a lizard. Something is not right there. They checked into his family and they found out that the lineage was not pure. There was some problem in that lineage of priesthood in that family. Maybe, I don't know what it was exactly, if it was halalim or something was not right. Something was not 100% right with that family. See, you can detect. If you're sensitive enough, you can detect that something is not right. So that is why, getting back to what we were saying before, without the Torah, you don't have the same strength, you don't have the same values. People who have issues with their personality, like let's say somebody's arrogant. That's his weakness, that's his test, that's his challenge. If he does not learn Torah, especially Musar, how is he going to do battle with it? How will he control himself? He's going to have a hard time. He'll continue to pursue honor and be arrogant and perhaps abusive of others too, because it goes hand in hand. He may get angry very often as a result of his gava. Gava is the mother of all ills. Avi avot hatumah, as the Balei Mussar say. Gava, arrogance. And if you don't take action, then it's always going to remain a problem. And Hashem hates people who are arrogant more than almost anything else. So without Torah, it's a lost case. Lost case. It's a lost case for many, many other issues in life too. Without Torah, without guidance, how is a person going to win any battle against the Yetzirah? So now we can understand, because of the importance of the Torah, we can understand how our forefathers were willing to give their life for Torah and for Jewish education. They were even willing to give away all their money so that their children should have a Jewish education, proper Jewish, because they knew what it meant for them. How could a child be without Torah? Let me tell you a story that perhaps some of you heard it from me. It's a story that is found in the Rabbi Shvadron's book, Sha'al Avicha V'yagetcha. Stories that were told by the great Magidim, the great teachers, stories that they recounted that had a tremendous musar haskell, a tremendous valuable moral lesson to learn. And this is the story, one of the stories, the story about the Radvaz, great rabbi, lived several hundred years ago, who on a cold night in Tzfat, I think it was, when he was already 80 years old, was having hesitations whether he should go to shul. He was 80 years old, very cold and snowy. But what were his hesitations? I mean, it's his father's yortzeit. Anyway, he went. And in shul, people see that he's crying. Shedding, tears. They understood it was his dad's yortzeit, the day of passing. So they went over to him, Rabbi, with all due respect, we understand that today is your father's yortzeit, but he passed away 40 years ago. Why are you still crying about it? There's nothing. He says, I'm not crying about that. I'm crying about something else, and let me tell you what I'm crying about. He says, when I was growing up, my parents were not very, very wealthy. They were average. They worked very, very hard. And whatever money they had, they spent on me. They wanted to make sure that I have a very solid Jewish education. That's what they spent most of their money on. One year, my father didn't have too much work. The father was, I don't know what they call the business, but he was one that would make ovens from bricks. And these ovens were for cooking and for heating the house, for everything. It was one oven that was made from bricks somewhere in the house, and it was not cheap. Not everybody could afford such an oven. So he used to make some money from this, But he didn't have that much work one year. And as a result of not having too much work, the parents couldn't keep up with paying the teacher of their son, in school. So one day the teacher sent a note with the son, tell your parent, give this to your parents. And the parents read the letter. Listen, if you don't pay me what you owe me, what you still need to pay me for the rest of the year, I'm sorry, but I will not be able to continue teaching your son. So they felt terrible. What are they going to do now? We're talking about parents that were prepared to sell the jewelry, everything, even the jewelry, to be able to provide a Jewish education for the son. But here they're running out of money. They don't have anything left. What do you do now? All of a sudden, the father gets an order. Baruch Hashem. He gets an order to make a beautiful fireplace, an oven, for this very wealthy non-Jew. Okay. Now what? Now I gotta buy the bricks. And in order to buy the bricks, you need money. So he doesn't even have money to buy the raw materials. What do? The father took apart his own oven in his house, the oven that supplied the heat for their home, in order to build the oven or the fireplace for that rich man. And this is how he was able to get a little bit of money to pay off the teacher. That winter night, that winter, we were very, very cold. The rabbi says, he remembers as a child, that winter they were very, very cold, but the parents didn't mind because they knew that in the meantime their son was getting a Jewish education. So the rabbi turns to his congregation and says, you want to know why I was crying? Here, I was hesitating a little bit to leave my house, to come to shul, not to come to shul because it was a little cold outside and snowy. I'm a little old, and I was hesitating because of that cold outside. But look at our forefathers, look at our parents. They were willing to sacrifice everything to live in a cold home an entire winter in order that their son should have a Jewish education. That's why I'm crying. How could I even think about not going to shul? Because it's a little cold outside. Look what they were willing to go through for Jewish education. So, obviously, there are many stories like that demonstrate that they cared. They cared. They knew what was important, what was valuable, and what was shtuyot, nonsense. This is important. This is the next generation. We have to provide them with the best education. Unfortunately, a lot of people would rather spend their money on luxuries and cars and send their kids to public school. And then what happens is, of course, they bring home a girlfriend that is not Jewish. They may be nice, decent people. Nothing wrong with it, but they're not Jewish. That means they're not your soulmate. But the child doesn't know soulmate, yes soulmate. He just knows he likes her. He's attracted. He's in love. And many times these loving relationships don't last long anyway. They don't know it. They don't have the values, they don't have the Torah, they don't have the proper guidance, and they get messed up. When people finally wake up in their later part of their life, and they do a cheshbon hanefesh, they start to value what they did wrong and what they did right in their life, I assure you that there's no one out there that later on in his retirement, in his senior years, is going to regret not having spent more time in the office. Nobody regrets not having spent more time in the office. If anything, they regret not having spent more time with their children and with their family. These are the kinds of things that we end up regretting, not realizing at the time that they were the ones that were important. The office, the work, who cares about those things? Nobody regrets those things, no. So that's something that people should pay more attention now, because you don't want to regret it later on. What is the difference between our generation and the past generation? Is that obviously the past generation understood the values, what they are, what a priority is. Today, people's priorities are all mixed up. They don't have necessarily certain values. They don't have certain principles that they follow. It's all whatever's more convenient, or whatever the neighbor does, or whatever the friend does. People don't have the same resolve. People don't have, of course, the same commitment. Therefore, they are disconnected. So when you see children, getting back to our question, when you see children who are drifting, obviously the connection is not strong. And it's not necessarily the parents' fault. It's not necessarily the parents' fault all the time. We can't always blame them. It's sometimes that individual's neshama, his own personal challenges, his exposure, of course, to society and the ills of society, but it's also the lack of commitment to Torah. Parshat Bechukotai, there's a very powerful word that not everybody understands properly. It says, "Im bechukotai telechu," right? "Bet mitzvotai tishmeru v'asitam otam." So what's bechukotai telechu? If it says to observe my mitzvot, what's the additional criteria here of bechukotai telechu? And you will follow in my statutes. So the rabbis tell us, "Shetiyu amelim b'Torah." Amelim b'Torah means that you should toil in the Torah. Toil. Yes, learning Torah, not just to learn it and to know it, but to actually toil. To toil means to immerse yourself, immersion. To make great efforts and strides, to dedicate yourself to it as many hours as possible. Make it your profession, make it your life. And if you do so, here comes the detail that people miss. One is dependent on the other. If you do follow in my statutes, then you will be able to mitzvotai tishmeru. In other words, you will be able to fulfill and observe the mitzvot. You will be able to continue to want to abide by the Torah and mitzvot. If you don't toil in it, if you don't value it, if you don't elevate it and appreciate it and consider it supreme, then the mitzvot one can become slack in the observance of mitzvot. That is why Bechukotai Telech is so significant. Amilut b'Torah, to toil in Torah means to treat it as the most important thing in one's life. But this is number one. Everything else is number two. And unfortunately, not everybody sees it that way. That was the great danger in Europe of the Haskalah, that the Chafetz Chaim Zechet Tzadik Lebracha fought many battles with, and other tzaddikim as well. There was the big problem was then that the authorities, including Jews, felt, allow the Jew to be broad-minded. Let him learn Polish. Let him learn how to speak. What is only Yiddish? Let him be knowledgeable. Let him go to school and absorb what there is to absorb other than Torah. Secular studies. On the surface, there's nothing wrong with it. On the surface, why not be open-minded, broad-minded, knowledgeable, several languages, and be able to get along with the goyim, be able to communicate with them. The great giants of Torah saw the danger, not the average Jew. The average Jew could not see the danger because what's wrong? The giants of Torah were able to see that this is a petach. It's an opening that the Yetzer Hara, the Satan, is opening and is threatening, of course. In other words, they didn't give him an easy time to the Jews. They actually threatened, if you don't do that, we kick you out, we punish you, we incarcerate you. This is a petach to chas v'shalom assimilate all the Jews into the non-Jewish society. It's an opening, it's a door. If it would be possible for the Jew to remain very, very observant and also know math and physics and all that, okay. If it would be possible, there's nothing wrong with knowing these sciences. On the contrary, there were many great Torah scholars that were great Torah scholars and knew that too, right? But if you compel everyone to go through this kind of a system, then you will have those who have a weak root system fall through the cracks, as they say in English. Not everyone can handle both. It's too enticing. Oh, really? To become a doctor, famous doctor in Berlin. Oh, you need to go to 12 years in college. And this, you got to learn this, and you got to speak German. What happens to the Torah? The Torah, yeah, I'll say Tehillim in the morning, and I'll go to Shidur, Dafa Yomi, Yes, you'll know a little bit of Torah, but the Jewishness will be lacking. That's why they stood their ground and they didn't give in an inch, not even an inch. Some of the Jewish conspirators who wanted to side with the non-Jews says, okay, then make a compromise. Only learn Polish. No math. No, not even that. And you say, wow, you're stubborn guy, you rabbis, you're being stubborn. What's wrong with just Polish? Because they knew the psychology of the Yetzer Hara. Today he takes a finger, tomorrow he takes the whole hand. Don't give him a finger. It's not that it's wrong. Know English, learn any language you want. But that's a petach. So the great giants of Torah, and some rabbis were not even aware that this is where it was leading to. They said, okay, let's give them in a little bit. There was even one rabbi says about another decree that they basically demanded of the Jews to wear non-Jewish clothing. In other words, wear the same hats, don't wear your beards, or don't wear the peot, be just like the goyim. And there's no isur in the Torah. They were not being asked to transgress an isur from the Torah. The rabbi says, no. We will not change anything. So the other rabbis came to him and says, why are you being so hard and difficult? They can make us trouble. And he explained to them, don't you understand the strategy here? It's today this, it's tomorrow that, and there's no end to it. You don't give in at all. Don't give in. You have to be very, very careful when you may not give in, but may adapt certain things just for the peace. You have to be very, very careful. Unfortunately, we had Jews fighting against us because that was the army of the Satan, the army of the Yetzirah, the army of the Tum'ah, trying to weaken the Jews' connection to Hashem and the Torah. Throughout our history, we have this in different forms and shapes. Today, it's the internet. Yes, the internet and all the other influences of modern society that directly and indirectly attempt to disconnect the Jew from his roots. So we wonder why Jews become disconnected, why the youth goes and strays. There's all kinds of things that can cause them trouble. And if they're sensitive souls and they're hungry for something or thirsty for something, and they don't find it, they're going to try all kinds of things. And by the time they've tried everything, they're so lost. The parents didn't do almost nothing wrong. I mean, sometimes it's the parents' fault too. But many times it's just that individual who's not properly connected through Torah and through a rabbi, through a good teacher, through good friends that can give him chizukim, strength. And that's why, many fall through the cracks. I'm reminded with a story. There was a rabbi who once stopped off at an inn. In Europe, especially in Eastern Europe, Jews used to be owners of bars and inns along the way, along the main highways between cities. People stayed overnight. They came for a good hot drink of vodka in the winter, or for lodging. So the rabbi stopped off, and he sees that in this far-flung place, there's a Jew running the business, and he says, thank you very much for your hospitality, but let me ask you something. What do you do about a minyan? Here, there's nothing here in this little village. He says, Rabbi, I'm sorry, here there's no minyan, but I have no choice. I need parnassah. I need a livelihood. So the rabbi turns to him, do you really mean to say that God cannot provide for you parnassah like he does to everybody else in the big city? Everybody else, you cannot have one. He heard what the rabbi had to say, and guess what? The next morning he packed his bags and left. Decided he's not staying behind. There were a lot of Jews who were tamim. Tamim means they were so sincere. They were very, very believing. And this one at least understood that the rabbi was right. And he says, yes, I cannot live here without a minyan. A Jew cannot live without a minyan. We need to be around a shul, around the mikveh, around shiurei Torah. Without that, we can't survive. In Iran, for example, you think there were only Jews in the big cities? There were small little towns everywhere, right, Abraham? Everywhere there were little towns that you maybe had 25 Jews.
In a very small village.
That
they called you for one family living in come around.
Yeah. You had to call the mohel from who knows how far away to come. There was nothing there. And I investigated, there was no mikveh in the city. In the village, no mikveh. Sefer Torah, not always. What did they do? Business, make money, work the land, raise sheep. I don't know what they did. This is not the light. And you wonder why there was not a lot of Torah in Iran? That's the reason. There was no yeshivot. Many of them went to Iraq to learn, because Iraq had some yeshivot. If you don't send your children away to yeshivot, this is what happens. My grandparents, alav shalom, from my mother's side, we were living in Brazil. They came to Brazil. My mother was born in Brazil. And back then, in their late 40s and even early 50s, there was not that much Torah where they lived, in Rio de Janeiro. And they were the only ones, my grandparents, who were willing to send away my mother and her two brothers to yeshivot in New York. Do you know what it was to go to New York from South America back then? If you took a plane, it took you 3 days, because the propeller planes did not travel at night. So they stopped off. It was expensive. It was a tremendous, big undertaking. Nobody thought of doing that. But they did it. They held that this has to be done if they want their kids to survive spiritually. Do you know that all the other family members made fun of them? Fun of them. What are you doing? You're crazy? Let them stay here. Let them get a good education here. What's the problem? There's good universities here. This is the only family that stayed religious, because my grandparents sent away their kids to yeshivot in New York and then in Israel. Everybody else, not religious. Some of them are assimilated. Unfortunately, very detached from Judaism. This was the investment. It paid off. They were able to see children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who are observant of Torah mitzvot. It required tremendous dedication, tremendous sacrifice too. Yes. But they understood the value of this. Baruch Hashem. I don't understand why they and not everyone else. Baruch Hashem, some zechut maybe. But even if you have a zechut, even if you understand, you still have to do battle with all those people who are telling you don't do it. You know how much pressure that is? Anyway, that is the secret. The secret, if we want to safeguard our children, obviously one has to pray a lot. Tremendous amount of prayer. One hopefully has to do the right things all along in raising his children. But one key that is very, very important that we should not forget about is that if the children see how important it is to the parents, then hopefully they will want to follow in their footsteps and do the same thing. If it meant so much to the parents and grandparents, so hopefully it will mean a lot to the kids. And even if the kid goes off the derech, his roots are still strong. He got a lot. And it could be that one day he will come back. He still has it. He will jump back. Right? All he will need is a little bit of help. Sometimes it happens that he gets off. But at least his root system is strong. Even if he went off the derech, through our prayers, through our tefillot, and through our tears, B'ezrat Hashem, even those children can come back. That is why it's important to pray. It's important to do whatever we can to show respect for the Torah, to support yeshivot, to support kollel, to show our kids that this is what we value, this is what we care about, that we're willing to do everything, even sacrifice for it. And in this way, B'ezrat Hashem, we will guarantee that we will be blessed. This Torah will remain with us and with our children. That the Torah will stay with our children and with all our descendants until the coming of Mashiach.
Amen.